From Los Angeles, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Puck Podcast. It is Monday, March the 31st. This is our first period of a three-period podcast. The first period, which some of you are watching on YouTube, recaps the past week in the NHL on and off the ice. Our second period is our interview or special feature segment. This week, Doug will have a chat with Rachel Donner, one of the co-hosts of Locked On Flyers, to talk about the team's coaching issue and also what else is going on with the team. And in our third period, it's our fan feedback segment where we have listener emails and we also give you our off-ice report, update you what's going on in our lives. You can find all three periods on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you're seeing on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel.
The Puck Podcast is the longest-running NHL podcast in the world, having delivered at least one episode a week every week since July of 2006, a streak of 975 weeks and counting. Eddie and I have combined for over 50 years of experience in sports media, and we've been a part of the NHL media since 2006. Each week, we look back at the past 7 days in the NHL and discuss every game, trade, signing, suspension, firing, or hiring. And we treat all 32 teams equally. So the biggest story is where we start every show. And for that, I turn it over to my good friend, my co-host, and a man who still giggles when he hears someone refer to a hot dog as a wiener, Eddie Garcia.
Okay. Well, the NHL regular season has 17 more days left as we record this show. So far, we've had a couple more teams clinch playoff spots. A couple of teams are on the verge. A couple of teams have been eliminated as well. But it was another big week of games to talk about as the playoff picture continues to develop. And we are going to recap every game over the past 7 days to let you know how that picture is looking now. We start 1 week ago, last Monday, where we had 4 games on the schedule. And the Eastern Conference wildcard race has been wild. We'll start with that as two teams trying to get one of those final wildcard spots went head-to-head in New York. That was the Blue Jackets taking on the Islanders. This one had a little bit of everything, including controversy. In the end, Columbus gets the 4-3 shootout victory. Kirill Marchenko gets his 26th of the year to tie it in the third period. Adam Fantilli scored his 22nd and also gets the shootout game winner as the Blue Jackets moved 2 points back of Montreal for the final playoff spot in the East. At that point, the Islanders did pick up a point. They were 1 point back of Montreal for that last playoff spot in the East. Very controversial goalie interference call in this one. Kyle Palmieri scoring a goal in the final seconds of regulation, but it was waved off. He was called for goalie interference. And we just had the NHL GM meetings. The league had a big video presentation to all the general managers explaining about goalie interference. They also did it with some select members of the media. So they explained what they do, but there's still some controversy. It's still human beings deciding this thing. And that was certainly a very controversial call this week.
Well, both things are true on this one, though. It's goalie interference and it's not. And by that, I mean, by the letter of the law and the way they have defined it, it is goalie interference. But anybody watching that would never say, oh, Kyle Palmieri clearly interfered with his ability to make the save. So it's both things are true, and that's why I can see it from both sides. Obviously, if you're a Blue Jackets fan or an anti-Islanders fan, you're like, oh, he entered the blue paint with his posterior and made contact with the goalie, which anything that happens after that, you wave it off. That kept the goalie from being able to come out as far as he wanted in his crease and play the puck. Whereas anybody else, anybody objectively looking at this thing would say they may have touched, but it had absolutely nothing to do with that goal going in at all. So for them to wave it off, I think is stupid. We should be looking at goalie interference where it's actually interfering with the goalie's ability to play the puck, to make a play on the puck or a rebound. And that was not the case here at all. That goal should have counted. The Islanders got screwed, in my opinion, and the Blue Jackets got a break, one that they desperately needed based on the way their last few weeks have gone. And that would start a very good week for Columbus.
And this is another case for me of the NHL over-policing the game. One of the things I like about hockey is the toughness players have to show to go to the net, to have that desire to go to the net, to screen the goalie, to get deflections, to make the goalie uncomfortable as much as you can and pay the price in front for being able to do that. I like that about hockey. This is another instance where we're taking away goals when that's something we probably shouldn't want to do, generally speaking. So, yeah, I'm with you. And again, we talk about replay. what it was originally designed to do, to overturn blown calls. This is, again, nitpicking. This is splitting hairs. It's just, again, an over regulation of the game, and it just isn't necessary, and it's not something anybody, I don't think, likes to talk about. Sometimes it goes for you, sometimes it goes against you, but in the end it doesn't really translate into something that's good for the game, to me.
And they're not all created equal either, and
Right.
that's the unfairness of it. So obviously this was a pivotal goal that would have won the game for the Islanders, and instead they lose the game. So by taking that one away, but maybe, oh, well, you got the benefit of the doubt in a 4-1 win earlier in the season. That doesn't equate. That wasn't the defining goal. This was. And it was against a team we're directly competing with. If this was against the Sharks, I'm not as worried about them getting the 2 points. I'm very worried about the Blue Jackets getting the 2 points. So the timing of it, the Islanders were white hot pissed after this. New York media that care about the Islanders were pissed about this. It bled into shows that have nothing to do with hockey the next day. So, it's a talking point in New York when the week of baseball opening and the NBA season is going on and they're signing players for the NFL teams of importance. And they're talking about the Islanders. They led the show. One of the major New York sports talk shows led off with the talk about the Islanders getting screwed last night. And that's not a good look for the NHL, because I guarantee they don't talk about the Islanders any other time. So if you just listen to that show, your understanding is the Islanders got screwed. And that's the first time I've heard about the Islanders this entire year. So it's not a good look. And I think for the players, to your point, Eddie, is look at it from Kyle Palmieri, what he has to deal with to get to that position. He has to fight through checks, fight board battles along the wall, maybe getting knocked into the glass, taking a stick, taking a slash. But you're telling me my ass brushes up against his blocker and we wave off the goal? Come on. Like, I got to be a tough guy and fight like hell to get here. But if I so much as brush against him, then it's goalie interference and the goal is waved off. It's stupid. The goalies are the most protected players on the ice. And I get that they're also the most vulnerable because they're not expecting to get hit. But he wasn't hit. He was contacted. But again, it had nothing to do with it. Common sense needs to play a role in this. And looking at the video and just saying, well, he did hit him and he was in the paint when he got hit, so wave it off. That's not good enough. And that shouldn't be good enough for the NHL. And if they just had this meeting with the players or the owners and the GMs, you would think they would have gone over that. And Lord knows I would have if I was a GM or if I was in that meeting. But obviously the NHL is fine with this because it's been the standard we've seen for the duration of us doing this show. It's been an infuriating topic for every fan at one point or another. It's inconsistent, and it leads to hurt feelings and bitterness when things like this happen in vital games of importance late in the year.
And I've said it seems like there is no such thing as incidental contact anymore. There used to be just guys in front of the crease, maybe even a goalie kind of comes out a little too far. There's contact, but it's not a penalty, or it's not something that should take away a goal. It seems like that doesn't really exist anymore. So we'll see how this is officiated and what type of conversation or controversy this might be going ahead into the playoffs.
Well, was it before we move on? Was it Carey Price that perfected the art of this, where he would intentionally initiate contact? Because the goalie can initiate the contact and have it still be goalie interference. And I think he was the one that used that. If anybody came anywhere near his crease, he initiated contact because he knew if he then got beat on a goal, it would get waved off. And it was an exploitation of the rules and a perversion of the rules, but it was exactly what he knew. He read it, he did his homework, and he got the benefit of the doubt more often than not.
Yeah, it seems like it would be very easy to say, if you're in the crease and you make contact, no goal. If the goaltender's out of the crease or part of his, skates are outside the blue paint and there's contact, that's on him, play on. I don't know. Maybe that's an oversimplification. Maybe it's not that cut and dry, but seems like maybe that would help a little bit to just make it as simple as possible.
A little bit, but in this case, Palmieri was never in the crease with his feet, but his body was. He was literally hovering over the line. He expertly, and deftly used his skates to go around the perimeter of the crease. But it was right on the border, and the back of his jersey and his back went into the crease, and that's where the contact happened. Now, again, he didn't initiate the contact. The goalie was coming out to play a puck. It was a bad. I hated seeing it. I got it. I understood it as soon as I watched it, but I hated seeing it. And I didn't really get too upset about it because I've seen it so many times before that as soon as I saw him make contact, I'm like, yep, they're going to wave that off. And they did.
Canucks edge the Devils 4-3 in a shootout. Jonathan Lekkerimäki scored in regulation and the shootout game winner as well for Vancouver. Connor Garland gets his 18th with 46 seconds left. That tied it and sent the game beyond regulation. And Thatcher Demko returned to the crease for Vancouver, first time since February the 8th, and he gets the win with 22 saves. He was out due to injury. In the loss, Timo Meier had 2 goals for New Jersey, 21 and 22 on the season for him. The Canucks moved 3 points back of St. Louis for the final wildcard spot in the West with that win.
Loved Jonathan Lepernicki in
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. He was fantastic. He was
fantastic. He's all grown up now.
He's all grown up, and
Look
now,
at him now.
I mean, the actual Jonathan Lepernicki is probably in his 40s because that movie was 30 years ago.
I don't want to think about that.
It's a hell of a name right there. Well, I mean, your boy Coop is not a young man anymore, and he was a child actor a long time ago. So no, hell of a game for Vancouver. And both them and Columbus really needed these wins. They got them. And for Thatcher Demko to return, play well, and get a win, that's a big boost for Vancouver's playoff hopes at that point. We'll see how the week would continue.
Red Wings snap a 6-game losing skid down in the Utah Hockey Club 5-1. Alex DeBrincat scored his 33rd. Alex Lyon had to take over in the first period after Peter Mrazek was injured. He would come on to make 16 saves and get the win. Mrazek hurt in a collision with Utah's Dylan Gunther. Gunther would score Utah's only goal, his 26th. Red Wings moved 3 points back of the Canadians for the last wildcard spot in the East.
Should clarify it was a 6-game road losing streak that they snapped with a 5-1 win. And Patrick Kane setting a new record for games with a point. For a U.S.-born player, Phil Housley had the previous record. It is now Patrick Kane's and his alone.
What was the record he set? Total most points by U.S.?
No, most games scoring at least 1 point.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah.
Who would know that thing? You know, most goals scored by a left-handed shooting defenseman on the road against a team from Canada by a Swiss-born player.
You know who's going to love hearing that stat?
Let me think. Is his name? Is he in Chicago?
No, he's not. He's probably somewhere eating cake right now.
Oh. Well, the Patrick Kane guy that we are our longtime supporter.
No. He's Christopher Stieg, not Patrick Kane.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I get little different.
I get my diminutive white men.
Yeah, just a little different.
Confused.
One's all
that's right.
different.
My apologies.
The Stars shut out the Wild 3-0 behind 32 saves from Jake Ottinger. Dallas scored twice in the span of 58 seconds in the second period. That was all the offense they would need. Matt Duchene gets his 27th. Wyatt Johnston is 26th. Stars move 5 points up on Colorado for second in the Central and home ice advantage in their likely first-round playoff matchup. Dallas 10-0-1 in their last 11 on home ice.
Yeah, you mentioned it, the home point streak of 11 games, Jake Ottinger's 12th career shutout, and it is their second highest win total through 70 games in franchise history. So Dallas having a fantastic season. It's kind of getting lost in the shuffle because Winnipeg has been so amazing in the Central, and you've got Washington doing so well in the East that Dallas is kind of laying in the weeds, kind of going unnoticed, but having an amazing season.
On to Tuesday, where we had 10 games. You mentioned Winnipeg, the top team in the West, hosting the top team in the East, the Washington Capitals. Who knows, maybe a Stanley Cup playoff final preview. And the Jets pull out the 3-2 overtime win to become the first team in the Western Conference to clinch a playoff spot. Oh, by the way, also in the game, Alexander Ovechkin scored his 36th goal of the season. That is goal number 889, putting him 6 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record with, at that time, 11 games left in the season. Meanwhile, the Jets get the win on Nikolai Ehlers' breakaway goal in overtime. Winnipeg moved 1 point back of Washington in the race for the President's Trophy and home ice advantage throughout the postseason. Jets won both matchups against Washington this season. Both came in overtime. Oh, by the way, Grandma Fiddler game of the week.
Grandma, that was an easy one to pick there.
But it lived up to the hype.
It did. I think that's the last time these two teams will see each other. I'll be very surprised if both number one seeds make the Stanley Cup
It
final.
hasn't happened
Rarely
in a
happens.
while. I think
Yeah,
it's
rarely
like 20
happens.
years the last time it happened.
Yeah. So and it was a different playoff format last time it happened. It was 1 versus 8, and you reseeded. This is a tough path for them, especially the Jets' second round opponent, which is either going to be Colorado or Dallas, most likely. So very tough path for them, but a great win, and it is the fewest games in franchise history to secure a playoff spot for the Winnipeg Jets. Keeping in mind, this is not the Winnipeg Jets of old. This is combined with the Atlanta Thrashers. So they didn't make the playoffs very often. No dung. It's the fewest games needed to secure a playoff spot in an 82 game season for this franchise.
Couple of important news items involving these two teams from this week. We'll start with the bad news. That's the Winnipeg Jets. Forward Gabe Vilardi is out week to week with an upper body injury. Doesn't sound like he's going to be ready for the start of the playoffs. Sounds like they might need to go deep in the playoffs for him to be able to come back, maybe. But that's a guy who played on your top line. That's a very big power play producer for them as well. So that's a difficult loss for Winnipeg. For Washington, they signed defenseman Jacob Chikrin, 8-year extension, $72 million. He'll get $9 million per season. He's been great for him this year.
Yeah. So one guy gets paid, the other guy gets laid up with an injury. And the shock you heard throughout Los Angeles was Kings fans hearing the news that Gabe Vilardi was injured and was going to be missing some key games.
I don't believe he's played a full 82 yet in his
career. I'd be
very
surprised. I'm
pretty sure he has
not. He's almost the exact opposite of the hot dog eating champion.
Phil Kessel.
Yeah. He's the exact opposite. Phil Kessel's fat body could never get hurt. You can't hurt fat. You can't pull it. You can't sprain it. You can't do anything but discolor it. So he was just getting seasoned when he got hit. Gabe Vilardi has just been so unfortunate, and he was having such a great season.
Yeah.
That if you have any humanity in you, your empathy, unless you hate the Jets or hate Gabe Vilardi for some reason, he stole your girlfriend back in the day, or your boyfriend. I don't know what his life is, but it's just terrible. You hate to see that, and hopefully he's able to make it back before they are eliminated, and hopefully he's able to heal faster than expected.
That will not be our only Phil Kessel reference during the show, so heads up on that. The Maple Leafs rolled over the Flyers in Philadelphia 7-2. William Nylander, 2 goals, numbers 39 and 40. John Tavares, 2 goals as well, 31 and 32 as Toronto moved into first place in the Atlantic. They were tied in points with Florida with 89, but they had the tiebreaker. Philadelphia, meanwhile, lost its 6th straight. And afterwards, head coach John Tortorella had some interesting comments when he said, quote, "When you're in this type of situation and you're losing all the time and there's nothing at the end of the tunnel for you, there's certainly going to be some frustration. But it falls on me. I'm not really interested in learning how to coach in this type of season where we are right now, but I have to do a better job, so it falls on me getting the team prepared to play the proper way until we get to the end." End quote. Of course, the key phrase in that whole statement was, "I'm not really interested in learning how to coach in this type of season." 2 days later, the Flyers fired John Tortorella. He has 1 year left on his contract. He'll make $4 million a year to not coach unless he's hired by somebody else. We will have much more on this in our second period with Locked On Flyers co-host Rachel Donner, who Doug had a chat with.
Yeah, we'll get into the whole thing, this event, and specifically in this game where they got absolutely blitzed by Toronto, boat raced 7-2. Whatever the case, nobody's talking, but something happened between John Tortorella and Cam York. And Cam York played 3 minutes and 50 seconds of this game and did not see the ice in the last 50 minutes of it. And after the game, the two of them had words. And according to Kevin Kurz of The Athletic, both men crossed the line with each other. And so who knows what led to that, but Rachel has a lot of great insights in the second period. So if you're watching on YouTube, definitely go find the podcast and listen to that interview because it's worth it. If you're listening to the podcast, good news for you. It's coming up in the second period. Really good insights into what led to this blow up and the firing of John Tortorella, which if anybody's listened to the show, they know Eddie and I are no fan of John Tortorella. We don't think he's a coach for the modern NHL. And that kind of comment, I'm not interested in learning how to coach this kind of. What are you talking about? You've coached bad teams before. The Flyers were bad when they hired you. This is not a team that was a cup contender and is now starting a rebuild. They sucked when you got there. You've been coaching this style of team for 3 years now.
You knew the job was dangerous when you took it.
That's right. That's right. You know, I started dating a drug addict and I'm really having second. I'm not interested in learning how to manage this kind of a relationship. Yeah, it's just, I don't get those comments, but I'm glad he's gone. And as someone said, I wish I had that had marked it. A Ducks fan responded on social media to this and said, "Don't even think about it, Pat Verbeek." Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think he coaches again?
100%.
Really?
It's an
I say
incestuous
no.
league. It's an
Yeah.
incestuous league. These
I mean,
people
but
don't
there's been
think outside the people that have already done it.
yeah, but there's been guys that I thought would get another chance who haven't. It seems like we're kind of moving away. You know what I mean? Like Alain Vigneault. I thought, gosh, what's the former coach there in Vegas?
Gerard Gallant.
Gerard Gallant. I thought those guys would get hired again, and they haven't. It seems like we're kind of maybe moving away from those kinds of
You're
coaches.
very
So
true, but and Gerard Gallant may get a job at some point. I'm surprised he's not working because of the success he's had, but John Tortorella has gotten chance after chance, and I was surprised he got the Flyers job, and I
yeah,
think he
especially
will.
I mean, these comments certainly look when you get hired as a coach, you almost always are taking over a bad team. It's very
Right.
rare that somebody's going to retire and hand over a great team for you or a team that's on the cusp of something. So if a team's going to hire John Tortorella and he's not interested in coaching that kind of team, that kind of limits his options, I would think.
Yes, and a team is only going to hire John Tortorella, I think, to be this kind of a guy that takes over a young team that needs to learn the hard way to play the game and the discipline that it takes to play the game at the NHL level. You're not getting John Tortorella to get your team over the hump. Gee, we've been making the playoffs for so many years. Who can get us over the hump? I know a guy that won the cup 20 years ago, which is when he won. It's a different era from when he won the cup. So I do think he'll work again, though, just because he's got a lot of friends in the league. This league is not smart about giving new people opportunities, and they recycle the same names over and over again. So I do think he'll get it. I don't think it'll be immediate, but I think he will work again. Now, as for this game, William Nylander, the second Swedish skater in NHL history, with 3 consecutive 40-plus goal seasons. So he is carving himself quite the career already with his third straight 40-plus goal season.
St. Louis Blues remain red hot. They won their 7th in a row with a 6-1 win over the Canadiens. Jordan Kyrou gets his 31st. Dylan Holloway is 24th, and Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg each had a goal and 3 assists. Jordan Bennington, 24 saves in net. Nick Suzuki scored his 22nd for the Canadiens in the loss as Montreal was still holding on to that final wildcard spot in the East. 1 point up on the Rangers and Islanders at that point.
Basically, since the Four Nations break, when Jordan Bennington went and won the gold medal for Team Canada, and we came out of that and I said they should trade him right now. His stock will never be higher. Well, they knew what they were doing. 13, 2, and 1 since the Four Nations break are the St. Louis Blues. Red hot does not define it. They are on a absolute historic heater, and we'll see if they can keep this going in the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs. And as you mentioned, Philip Broberg, a 4-point game, a rare defeat or a rare feat for any defenseman, but certainly it's somebody that young, 23 or younger. So, but absolutely amazing what St. Louis has been able to do since the Four Nations break, whether it was getting away from the game and recollecting themselves or the confidence that some of their players came out of that tournament with. We've seen a few players. We're going to talk about another one in a little bit that have come out of that tournament with a renewed vigor for the season and a renewed confidence, and it's completely changed the way they were playing going into the tournament.
Flames edge the Kraken 4-3 in overtime. Calgary wins it on Nazem Kadri's OT game winner, his second of the game, goals 27 and 28. That was 4 straight come-from-behind wins for Calgary, but they can't gain ground on St. Louis because they keep winning. So the Flames are still 4 points back with the Blues for the last wild card spot in the West.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, 4 straight comeback wins. The good news is you're coming back. The bad news is you're always behind. Nazem Kadri with his second consecutive overtime winner, so he's making an impact there as well.
Senators lost to the Sabres 3-2. Tage Thompson gets the game winner in the third period, his 35th of the year, helping Lindy Ruff win his 600th NHL game as Sabres head coach. Only Al Arbour, with 740 wins of the Islanders, had more victories with one franchise. In the loss, Brady Tkachuk gets his 29th, but Ottawa remained 4 points up on Montreal for the number one wildcard spot in the East.
Stop me if you've heard this before, Eddie. Buffalo is not as bad as their standings would indicate.
You say that pretty much every week. The Avalanche down the Red Wings 5-2. Nathan McKinnon had a goal, his 29th. Cale Makar gets his 27th as Colorado improved to 11-1-1 in its last 13 and moved 3 points back of Dallas for second in the Central and home ice advantage in the first round. Detroit remained 3 points out of the final wildcard spot in the East.
Devin Taves with his 3-point night in the win for the Avalanche, extending their home winning streak to 10 games. So Colorado playing very well at home. That could be big if it comes to the home ice advantage in the Dallas series, who is also great at home. We mentioned 11-game unbeaten streak at home for Dallas. Mackenzie Blackwood, the second fastest Avalanche goalie to reach 20 wins on the season.
Golden Knights handle the Wild 5-1. Jack Eichel a hat trick for Vegas, goals 24, 25, and 26. Aiden Hill, 23 saves in net. And also for the Golden Knights, defenseman Shea Theodore activated off long-term injured reserve. He'd been out since getting hurt in the Four Nations. Vegas moved 5 points up on LA for the top spot in the Pacific Division. For Minnesota, their lead on St. Louis for the number one wildcard spot in the West was down to 2 points.
And that is the 5th hat trick of the season for the Vegas Golden Knights, which sets a team record for most in a single season.
Kings knock off the Rangers 3-1. Kevin Fiala had 2 goals, numbers 27 and 28. Darcy Kemper, 22 saves in net, improving to 14-0-1 in his last 15 home starts. The Kings had 2 power play goals for just the second time this season. The last time was week 3 in a loss against Ottawa. LA moved 2 points up on Edmonton for second place in the Pacific and home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs. JT Miller, the lone goal for the Rangers, is 18th. New York had lost 8 of 11 at that point and remained 1 point back of the Canadiens for the final wildcard spot in the East.
And you mentioned it, a franchise record home point streak for the Kings, extending to 15 games. And Anze Kopitar passing Henrik Sedin for 4th most in assists by a player born outside of North America. So excluding Canada and the United States, every other NHL player, Anze Kopitar, 4th most assists.
Lightning roll over the Penguins 6-1. Anthony Cirelli had 2 goals, numbers 25 and 26. Braden Point, his 35th. Brandon Hagel, his 33rd. And Nikita Kucherov gets his 31st goal of the year and hits 100 points on the season. Andrei Vasilevsky, just 14 saves in net in the win. Tampa Bay remained 2 points back of Toronto and Florida for first place in the Atlantic.
Tampa has not only, that's by the way, the 5th time in his career that Nikita Kucherov has hit the 100-point mark. And they have 6 20-goal scorers this season. 3 of them have hit 30 goals. They are going to be a dangerously deep offensive team come playoff time.
And the Hurricanes were surprised by the Predators 3-1. Luke Evangelista had 2 goals, numbers 8 and 9, and UC Saros 32 saves in net for Nashville. On to Wednesday, where we had 4 games, and the Canucks knock off the Islanders 5-2. Vancouver forward Kiefer Sherwood, who set a new NHL record for hits in a season this week, scored 2 goals, numbers 16 and 17. Thatcher Demko gets his second straight win, and Vancouver moved 3 points back of St. Louis for the last wildcard spot in the West. The Islanders remained 1 point back of the Canadiens for the final wildcard spot in the East.
And you mentioned it, Thatcher Demko with a strong performance in his second game since returning from injury. 2-0-0. They just signed Kevin Lankin into an extension. You got to wonder what the future is in net. But Thatcher Demko, if he's healthy, is a clear number 1 on this team. It's just that they know they can't count on him to be healthy for a full season. So that's why they've got Kevin Lankin in as the insurance policy for Demko going forward.
Stars get by the Oilers 4-3. Dallas jumping out to a 4-0 lead behind a natural hat trick from Jason Robertson. Goals 30, 31, and 32. They did have to hold off a late Edmonton rally. Dallas, though, moving 5 points up on Colorado for that second spot in the Central and home ice advantage in the first round. Oilers, still playing without Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl at this point, remained 2 points back of the Kings for second in the Pacific.
Yeah, I turned this game off. I think it was 5-1. I came back, I saw it was 5-4, and I'm like, oh no, Dallas is about to choke this away. But Nay, all is well for Dallas as they get the 2 points in Edmonton, despite having a decent offensive game, well, actually pretty good with 4 goals. It's too little too late when you give up 5 early in the game and a natural hat trick to Jason Robertson.
Devils down the Blackhawks 5-3. Dawson Mercer, 2 goals, 16 and 17. Stefan Nason gets his 20th for New Jersey in the loss for Chicago. Tyler Bertuzzi had his 20th. And the Ducks defeat the Bruins.
Well, I just wanted to say Luke Hughes had 3 assists, which matched a career high for him in one game.
Ducks defeat the Bruins 6-2. Leo Carlsson, 2 goals, numbers 17 and 18. Mason McTavish is 19th in the win for the loss. In the loss for Boston, Morgan Geekie his 26th.
Yeah, that's bad effort, bad look for Boston. They were not competitive against the Ducks at all, and rare laugher for Anaheim.
On to Thursday, where we had 10 games, and the Senators get by the Red Wings in Detroit 4-3. Ottawa jumping out to a 3-0 lead, but they then needed a Michael Amadio goal to get the win. Tim Stützle gets his 21st of the season. Ottawa 6 points up on Montreal for the number 1 wildcard spot in the East. For the Red Wings on the loss, Lucas Raymond his 25th, Patrick Kane his 19th. Detroit stayed 3 points back in Montreal for the last wildcard spot in the East. Canadians lost to the Flyers 6-4 in the first game for Philadelphia since the firing of John Tortorella. Rookie Matvei Michkov had 2 goals, numbers 21 and 22. Sean Couturier, 2 goals, numbers 14 and 15, as Philadelphia snapped their 6-game losing skid and gave interim head coach Brad Shaw his first NHL win on the bench. For Montreal, Cole Caulfield gets his 34th, and defenseman Lane Hudson became the 5th rookie defenseman in NHL history to record 50 assists in a season. But the Habs dropped their 4th straight, and their lead on the Islanders and Rangers remained at 1 game for the last wildcard spot in the East.
I think Lane Hudson has clinched the Calder Trophy. Do you agree, or do you think Matvei Michkov and maybe even Dustin Wolf are still in the running?
I would agree with you. Yes, I believe he has clinched it.
Yeah,
because I think Dustin Wolf to me would have been my second if they would have gotten the playoffs. He might have won it, but they're not. Calgary's obviously not going to make the playoffs. So.
No, and literally a historically good year for Lane Hudson from the blue line from Montreal. Just absolutely scorching what he's been able to do offensively, and very impressive. But that, when you look back at the Montreal opportunities, this is a game against a team that they're like, couldn't they have had Tortorella for just one more game so that they wouldn't have played so well? And we mentioned Cam York getting benched for the final 50 minutes of John Tortorella's last game, their loss to Toronto. Well, Brad Shaw takes over behind the bench, and Cam York never saw the ice, literally sat on the bench the entire game, did not see a single shift at the behest, at the direction of GM Danny Briere. So it was not a coach's decision. They would have healthy scratched him if they had anybody else to put in the lineup. They didn't. So they said, you're going to dress, you're going to sit on the bench, and you're going to get the door. You're never going to see the ice. So whatever Cam York did, it was bad enough that they're making an example out of him.
I heard he was sitting on the bench for most of the game without a stick before someone said, give him a stick because it looks bad. So,
well, it looks bad to bench a guy for the entire game. Yeah. What do you care if he's not sitting there with his helmet off, shades on. He's at least, but I get what you're saying. But yeah, him and the backup goalie had a great conversation that night.
Maple Leafs lost to the Sharks 6-5 in a shootout. Rookie Macklin Celebrini gets the shootout game winner. Tyler Toffoli had 2 goals, numbers 26 and 27. The Leafs needed 2 goals in the final minute to be able to scratch out a point in this one from John Tavares, his 33rd, the other from William Nylander, his 42nd. For Nylander, it was his second of the game. That point, though, would turn out to be important for Toronto because that put him into first place in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, shocking win for San Jose, and it would be a harbinger of doom for your Kings and my Ducks as it pissed off the Maple Leafs for the rest of their California trip.
Lightning embarrassed the Utah Hockey Club 8-0. Jake Gensel, 2 goals, 35 and 36. Oliver Bjorkstrand, 2 goals, 18 and 19. Braden Point gets his 36. Nikita Kucherov his 32nd. And Andrei Vasilevsky, 25 saves in the shutout. He's a guy who's having a great season and should be in the Vezina discussion as well, but getting a bit overlooked because we just expect him, I guess, to be great. But he's having a hell of a season for the Lightning as well as they move into a tie with Florida for second in the Atlantic, each with 89 points, 1 point back at Toronto for first in the division.
I mean, who wants to play a Tampa Bay Lightning team in the first round? As I mentioned, You've got 6 20-goal scorers, so you can't focus. It's not an Edmonton Oilers where you say we can focus on these two guys. Everybody can beat you. You've got a Hall of Fame goalie between the pipes having a great season and an experienced head coach that has had great success in the playoffs, won multiple cups, and a roster that just knows how and when to turn it on. So it's a very dangerous team. Nikita Kucherov factored in on half of the 8 goals and got his 32nd career 4-point game. It passes Steven Stamkos for the most 3-point games in franchise history. And it was Andrei Vasilevsky's 40th career shutout, the third fastest active goalie to reach 40 shutouts. Absolutely scary what that team could be capable of once they make the postseason.
Avalanche shut out the Kings 4-0 behind 22 saves from Mackenzie Blackwood. Marty Necas had 2 goals, numbers 25 and 26. Colorado remained 5 points back of Dallas for second in the Central. LA, for some unknown reason, started their backup goalie David Riddick in this one. LA remained 2 points up on Edmonton for second in the Pacific and home ice in the playoffs.
Well, we talked about this offline, and I know you talked about it on your Locked on LA Kings podcast at great length. It made no sense to us in advance, and it felt like the Kings knew they weren't going to win this game, and they didn't want to get Garcia Kemper lit up and ruin his confidence for the postseason should they need it on the road. But it just sent a bad signal. There's no other reason to start David Rittich unless he was sick, which go ahead and tell us, explain to us if that's the case. But it was a bad look, I thought. As for the Avalanche, they get their second longest home winning streak in franchise history. They're at 11 games right now. And Nathan McKinnon's home point streak has eclipsed Zach Werenski's for the longest in the NHL so far this season.
Stars down the Flames 5-2 in Calgary. Mikko Rantanen gets his 30th. Matt Duchene and Wyatt Johnston each their 28th goals of the year. Roope Hintz his 26th. And goalie Casey DeSmith, 46 saves in net. In the loss, Nassim Kadri, 2 goals, numbers 29 and 30. Flames drop 6 points back of St. Louis for the final wildcard spot in the West because the Blues won again, beating the Predators 3-2 for their 8th straight win. Dylan Holloway, 2 goals, numbers 25 and 26. St. Louis 5 points up on Vancouver for the final wildcard spot in the West. Nashville officially eliminated from the playoffs with that loss.
Winners in the offseason, losers ever since. The Nashville Predators. Dallas Stars, by the way, Mikko Rantanen's 5th straight 30-goal season. So, guy's obviously a consistent producer, unless he's wearing a Carolina Hurricanes sweater. As for the St. Louis Blues, Dylan Holloway, you mentioned 2 goals in their 8th straight win, including the game winner. He is tied for 3rd most points in the NHL since March 1st. So this month, he's had the 3rd most points. Sidney Crosby, Roope Hintz, Nikita Kucherov, all tied with Dylan Holloway as the 3rd most productive player this month. And I think the leader is John Tavares, who's been absolutely scorching hot in March and is going to be the player of the month. But Dylan Holloway, what a contract offer that was. Offer sheets work, everyone. Use them more often.
Wild down the Capitals 4-2. Frederick Gaudreau had 2 goals, number 17 and 18, while Matt Boldy scored his 24th, and that was the game winner. No goals for Alexander Ovechkin. He remained 6 away from Gretzky with 10 games left to play at that point. Minnesota remained 2 points up on St. Louis for the top wildcard spot in the West. For Washington, remained 1 point back of Winnipeg in the race for the President's Trophy. Also, a very cool moment in this one. Apparently, the Caps were leaving the ice, and Alexander Ovechkin called his teammates back and said, "We're going to get in a line and shake Marc-Andre Fleury's hand." Of course, the last meeting between the Wild and Capitals, unless they meet in the Stanley Cup final. And Ovechkin wanted him and his teammates to pay their respects to the future Hall of Fame goalie. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty classy move by Alexander Ovechkin. Most of the team was still on the ice or on the bench. A couple guys had gone into the locker room early, but he called them back out, and well done by him, the captain. Matt Boldy, by the way, for the Wild, setting a franchise record with his 9th game-winning goal of the season, and he's had an outstanding year. And for Minnesota to make the playoffs, if you had told them before the season Kirill Kaprizov is going to be injured for the majority of the year, I don't think anybody would have thought they would have a chance to be in where they are. But Matt Boldy having a great season and the entire team picking up the slack. Very impressive what they've been able to do in Minnesota this year.
Oilers got rolled by the Kraken 6-1. Edmonton still without Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. Jaden Schwartz had 2 goals, numbers 22 and 23. Matty Berniers and Jared McCann each had their 18th for Seattle. Joey Decord, 36 saves in net. Edmonton remained 2 points back of LA in the race for second in the Pacific and home ice advantage in the first round.
As I told you in a text as this game was happening, when you watched this game and you realize what the Oilers are without McDavid and Draisaitl, it's an absolute garbage team. I mean, they just are not competitive, and they have no idea where to go with the puck because every time those two guys are on the ice, they're getting the puck or they're carrying the puck. They're the ones setting up the play. They're the go-to on the power play. They're at a loss without those guys, and they simply don't have enough talent. We talked about Minnesota getting by without Kirill Kaprizov. That is simply not happening in Edmonton. No McDavid, no Draisaitl, no chance for Edmonton to win games on a consistent basis, and sure as hell not to advance if those guys aren't ready to go when the playoffs begin.
Sabres took care of the Penguins 7-3. Yuri Kulik had 2 goals, numbers 13 and 14. Tage Thompson gets his 36th. Alec Tuck his 28th. In the loss for Pittsburgh, Sidney Crosby gets his 24th goal. It gave him 80 points on the season and assured he will finish for his 20th season, averaging a point per game, and that broke Wayne Gretzky's all-time record.
He also extended his point streak to 9 games, second only to Mario Lemieux's streak of 11 for guys 37 or older. So for the old guys, him having a long point scoring streak, rare company with his old landlord, Mario Lemieux.
On to Friday, where we had 6 games, and the Hurricanes down the Canadians 4-1. Sebastian Aho gets his 27th. Andrei Svechnikov back from injury gets his 19th. And Frederik Andersen had to make only 14 saves in net in the win. Montreal lost its 5th straight game. They fall out of the final wildcard spot in the East. One note for Carolina, defenseman Brett Burns played in his 915th consecutive regular season game, taking over sole possession of the 4th spot on the all-time Ironman list. He's 149 games behind Phil Kessel for the all-time lead.
That's Brent Burns is one of those guys that it's tough to root against, even if he's not on your team. He seems like a guy that plays the game the right way, has never caused too much problems, and has a lot of joie de vivre off the ice. Owns a humongous ranch last time I checked, and loves spending time there and getting away from hockey as soon as his season is over. So good for him. And I hope that he plays long enough to track down that record and give it a run.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does. Blue Jackets pull out a big 7-6 shootout win over the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver jumped out to a 3-0 lead. Columbus then scored the next 3 goals. The two teams combined for 5 goals in the third period. It was Kent Johnston winning it with a goal in the shootout. Kirill Marchenko added his 27th of the year. In the loss for Vancouver, Jake DeBrusk and Brock Besser each scored their 27th goals of the season. Columbus moved into the final wildcard spot in the East. They were tied in points with Montreal, but they had the tiebreaker. Vancouver gets a point. They move 4 back of St. Louis for the final wildcard spot in the West. Doug, I watched this game. This wasn't my Grandma Fiddler game of the week, but it was pretty damn close. It was just a fun, entertaining back and forth game. And the passion for these two teams fighting for a wild card spot was pretty fun.
Yeah, and for Columbus, fire the cannon 7 times. My goodness, what a night for them. The 8th time they've had a 3-goal comeback win in franchise history. And objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. They leapfrogged 3 different teams to get into that second wildcard spot with that 1 win. So a lot of celebration going on in Columbus. And I mentioned, I think a lot of it comes from that break they got against the Islanders early in the week, gave them some momentum, and they kept it going. They're getting the belief and we kind of wrote them off because they were playing so poorly for a couple weeks and were falling behind so many teams. Here they are making a comeback, not only in this game, but in the standings and resurrecting their playoff chances.
It's like no one wants that final wild card spot.
Absolutely nobody does. If you look at the standings,
nobody has an excuse to say we didn't have a chance. Everybody had a shot if they could have put some wins together to get that final wild card spot. So the ones that are on the outside looking in when it's all said and done, you had your chance and you blew it.
Oh, 100%. The Bruins, the Flyers, the Islanders, the Red Wings, the Blue Jackets, the Rangers, the Canadiens. 6 of those teams are going to miss out. And the one that makes it is going to say, thank goodness we made it. Now let's see what we can do. The others have nobody to blame but themselves because, as you mentioned, if you go down that list, the only team that has won even 5 of their last 10 games is the Penguins, and they're currently 7th in the race for the wild card. So it's too little too late for them. They'd have to pretty much win out, and that's not going to happen. So nobody is playing well. And if anybody was playing well, they'd be running away with it right now.
And speaking of that, yeah, the Rangers losing to the Ducks 5-4 in overtime. Mason McTavish's 20th of the season was the overtime game winner. Leo Carlson added his 19th, and the lost JT Miller, his 19th for New York. Rangers do get a point, and they did move into a tie with Columbus and Montreal for the final wildcard spot in the East. They all had 75 points, but I mentioned earlier, the Blue Jackets at that point did have the tiebreaker.
Yeah, and Leo Carlson is the guy I referred to earlier as a guy that came out of the Four Nations with a completely different mindset. He has looked like a different player since late February and a much better one. And he's been playing very well. And I don't know if you saw his goal scoring in this one and his rushes, but he looks like a dominant two-way player. And this is the guy that Ducks fans are looking forward to seeing for many years to come. He's got the scoring touch. When he wants to shoot it, he's dangerous, and he's got the speed and the size to make moves in open ice and create some space for himself. Excellent effort from him. Thrilling win for the Ducks, a team that is playing much better than I expected this season. Remember at the beginning of the year, I said, I just hope they're a bad team. Well, that's exactly what they are. They're a bad team this season. That got them to 500 on the season with 72 points through 72 games. That's fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
Jets blank the Devils 4-0. Connor Hellebuyck, 24 saves in net for his 7th shutout of the season, while also backstopping Winnipeg to its NHL leading 50th win of the year. Winnipeg moved 1 point back of Washington in the race for the President's Trophy and home ice throughout the playoffs.
As you mentioned, 50 wins. I mean, my goodness, with still games to play. So, and Connor Hellebuyck setting a franchise record. Again, it's the Atlanta Thrashers, Winnipeg Jets, so he's probably breaking his own franchise record here, but 7 shutouts this season.
Panthers got by the Utah Hockey Club 2-1 in his Florida debut. Brad Marchand gets an assist on the overtime game winner scored by Sam Bennett. Bennett scored both goals for Florida, numbers 24 and 25. Sergei Bobrovsky only had to make 13 saves in the win. Florida moved into first place in the Atlantic, 1 point up on Toronto at that point.
And a little teaser, we will be talking about Sergei Bobrovsky in the second period. I will be talking about him with Rachel Donner, and I think if you know Sergei Bobrovsky's history, you know why he might get mentioned. But what a debut for Brad Marchand to come in. This is the guy that they got potentially to get them a second straight Stanley Cup, but exactly that kind of clutch goal scoring and contributions and getting the assist in the overtime game winner. Beautiful play by him and a very successful debut for the newest Panther.
Golden Knights knock off the Blackhawks in Chicago 5-2. Victor Olofsson, 2 goals, numbers 12 and 13. Pavel Dorofeev gets his 31st in the loss for Chicago. Ryan Donato had a hat trick, goals 26, 27, and 28. On to Saturday, where we had 11 games, and the Stars clinch a playoff spot by beating the Kraken 3-1 in Seattle. Jason Robertson scored his 33rd of the season. Mikko Rantanen his 31st. Wyatt Johnston his 29th, and Roope Hintz his 27th. Jake Ottinger, 35 saves in net as Dallas moved 7 points up on Colorado for that second spot in the Central and home ice in the first round. Seattle officially eliminated from the playoffs.
And a multi-point performance from Mikko Rantanen, Jason Robertson, Roope Hintz, as you mentioned. Rantanen tying Teemu Selanne for the second most 50 assist seasons by a Finnish-born player in NHL history. And it's the Stars' 5th consecutive postseason appearance.
Maple Leafs down the Kings 3-1 in LA. John Tavares, 2 goals, numbers 34 and 35. Austin Matthews gets a shorthanded goal, number 29 for him. And Anthony Stolar's 35 saves in net as Toronto moved into first place in the Atlantic, 1 point up on Florida and Tampa Bay. LA remained in second place, but tied with Edmonton with 89 points. The Kings had a game in hand on the Oilers, and they have 2 head-to-head matchups coming up.
And a rare home loss in regulation for the LA Kings, just their 4th all season. As for Toronto, John Tavares, now a 5-game goal-scoring streak. So he is making himself quite the claim for getting another big contract potentially this summer.
Oilers got by the Flames 3-2 in overtime. Still no Connor McDavid, but Leon Draisaitl returned, and he had a big impact, scoring 2 goals, numbers 50 and 51, including the overtime game winner. We mentioned that the Oilers tied with the Kings for second in the Pacific. For Calgary, 7 points back of the Blues with 10 games left to play. And this kind of reminded me of an NFL game. While I was watching this game, obviously rooting against the Oilers. And in overtime, I'm like, don't leave Leon Draisaitl. Don't leave him open. Let some other guy shoot it. They left him open and he scored and the game was over. So,
well, I don't know about leaving him open. It was the Flames had the puck for like 45 seconds and they were working the puck around in their zone. Eventually there was a puck battle and they lost it. And the Oilers had a rush going up because there's only 3 people up there. So the guy's tired getting back. It's a 3-on-2. I get what you're saying. Somebody has to, but that's not what you're taught. You're taught to stop the puck first. And Draisaitl wasn't the first one into the zone. He gets the drop. He nails it. But you talk about an impact. You mentioned it. He had 2 goals and an assist. The guy had 3 points. It was his 100th career 3-point game. They only scored 3 goals. Without him, they don't win this game. And this was an old-fashioned Battle of Alberta. Some bad blood in this game. A little bit of a skirmish. Fun to watch. Very fun and spirited game. And this is the kind of stuff we like between these two teams. But man, Leon Draisaitl is good. The first player this season to reach 50 goals. And it's his NHL record 6th overtime winner of this season.
Blues won their 9th straight, beating the Avalanche in Colorado 2-1. Jordan Bennington, 28 saves in net. Pavel Buchnevich gets his 15th. That goal in the third period was the game winner. In the loss, Nathan MacKinnon scored his 30th of the season, tied for the NHL points lead with 109. St. Louis now tied with Minnesota for the number 1 wildcard spot in the West at that point, 87 points. Colorado's 11-game home ice winning streak comes to an end. They're 7 points back at Dallas for second in the Central at that point. And the St. Louis Blues are looking like a team that could be a problem for either Vegas or Winnipeg in the first round.
I'm not convinced they won't be playing Dallas. We'll get to the standings. The way they're playing, they're not losing very many games. They're racking up points as quickly as they can. 9th straight win. Robert Thomas has a franchise record for 4 straight multiple assist outings. And they're tied for the number 1 wildcard spot. I think they've got their eyes on higher than that. And if Colorado isn't careful, they could be a wildcard team. And that would be a very dangerous team for either Vegas or Winnipeg to have to play. So it's wild, pardon the pun with Minnesota, with what St. Louis is doing. I did not see this coming. I don't think anybody did, but my goodness, they are playing good hockey right now. And I think for that team, because of the way they won the cup with playing incredibly hot hockey down the stretch to even make the playoffs and go in with momentum, this is a team that believes they can go on or they can continue this in the playoffs and control their own destiny and make another run at a Stanley Cup.
Well, I told you they caught the Wild for the number 1 wildcard spot. That's because Minnesota lost at home to the Devils 5-2. Nico Hischier, a hat trick for New Jersey. Goals 31, 32, and 33.
Yeah, Hischier, a small group of Devils players with multiple hat tricks in a single season, but he did what he could and got the win there as the Devils hold on to 3rd place in the Metropolitan. They have not been playing their best hockey ever since Jack Hughes left. It's been much tougher. I think the wind is kind of out of their sails, but Nico Hischier is still doing his bit with his 2nd hat trick of the year.
Lightning down the Islanders 5-3. Braden Point, 2 goals, numbers 37 and 38. Jake Gensel gets his 37th. Nikita Kucherov his 33rd. He also had 3 assists to move into a tie with Nathan MacKinnon for the NHL points lead with 109. Tampa Bay moved into a tie with Florida for second in the Atlantic, both 1 point back of the Maple Leafs. Islanders, meanwhile, fell 3 points back of the Rangers for the final wildcard spot in the East.
I personally, if I was Toronto or Florida, I would let Tampa win the division so I didn't have to play them in the first round. And I might, try and avoid playing one of the wildcard teams. I'd rather play Toronto or Florida in that first round, I think, than potentially have to play Tampa in that first round.
I think Toronto wants to win the division title so they don't have to face either of those Florida teams.
Very true. But I would think Toronto does, but they're going to have to face them in the second round. They're going to have to face the winner of that first round matchup in the second round. I guess you'll take it if you make it that far, but my goodness, this team is hot. And Nikita Kucherov with a 4-point night again, as you mentioned, his 33rd career 4-point game. The guy is just absolutely scorching hot right now. The whole team is.
Rangers roll over the Sharks in San Jose 6-1. Artemi Panarin, 2 goals, numbers 32 and 33. Adam Fox had 2 goals, numbers 8 and 9. And Jonathan Quick, 21 saves in net to get the win as the Rangers moved into the final wildcard spot in the East. They were 2 points up on Montreal and Columbus. Senators beat the Blue Jackets 3-2. Drake Batherson gets his 21st. Jake Sanderson's 8th goal of the year was the game winner in the loss. Kirill Marchenko gets his 28th. Ottawa 6 points up on New York for the number 1 wildcard spot in the East. Rangers beat the Bruins 2-1. Lucas Raymond gets his 26th of the season on the power play. That's your game winner. Cam Talbot, 20 saves in net. Detroit remained 3 points out of the last wildcard spot in the East.
Just to clarify, the Red Wings with that win, beating the Bruins. You said the Rangers, but yes, the Red Wings.
Red Wings, thank you. Correct. Golden Knights beat the Predators in Nashville 3-1. Jack Eichel, his 27th. Riley Smith's power play goal in the third-year game winner. Aiden Hill, 23 saves in net. Vegas with a 9-point lead over the Kings and Oilers atop the Pacific at that point. And the Flyers moved to 2-0 since the firing of John Tortorella. 7-4 win over the Sabres. Matvei Michkov's second straight 2-goal game. Goals 23 and 24 to lead all rookies in goal scoring. In the loss for Buffalo, Alex Tuck, his 29th of the year.
Good news for Cam York. He saw the ice. Got 18 minutes and 53 seconds of ice time in this one. So good for him. But this was actually a game for last place. If Buffalo had won this game, Philadelphia would have fallen into last place in the Eastern Conference. So they hold them off by winning this game in regulation.
And our final day of the past week, Sunday, 8 games on the schedule, and the Hurricanes on the verge of clinching a playoff spot. They needed a win over the Islanders, which they got 6-4, but they also needed a Montreal loss. That didn't happen. Pierre Engvall, a couple of goals in this one for the Islanders, but the Hurricanes getting the home victory and are on the cusp of clinching a playoff spot.
I like their chances to clinch it by the time we do the show next week.
Pretty sure. I agree. The Canadians were party poopers, I guess, picking up a big win over Florida. They beat the Panthers 4-2. Nick Suzuki gets his 32nd in the third period, your game winner. Patrick Laine gets a power play goal, his 15th power play goal. He's got 19 goals on the year. And rookie Cole Hudson, 3 more assists, now 59 points on the season, tied for 5th amongst all defensemen in the NHL as far as points go. Montreal moved back into the final wildcard spot in the East, tied with the Rangers with 77 points, but Montreal a game in hand. Florida remained at 91 points on the season.
A huge win and an unexpected one on the road for Montreal, beating Florida, the defending Stanley Cup champs, in a game that they pretty much had to have to keep their wild card hopes alive, and getting that regulation win gives them some hope as the weeks dwindle down here. We got 3 weeks left, and they are still very much alive in the race.
Capitals lose to the Sabres at home, 8-5. Tage Thompson, 2 goals, numbers 37 and 38. Alex Tuck, 2 goals, numbers 30 and 31. Washington goalie Logan Thompson allowed 7 goals on 22 shots. For Washington, Alexei Protas gets his 30th, and Alexander Ovechkin scores his 37th of the season. Now 890 in his career. He is 5 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record with 9 games left in the regular season.
Keep it tuned to right here on the Puck Podcast in the third period, as I have a prediction of Alexander Ovechkin for this coming week.
Jets down the Canucks 3-1. Kyle Connor gets his 38th. Mason Appleton's 10th of the year in the third period is your game winner. Connor Hellebuck, 23 saves to get his NHL leading 43rd win of the season. Winnipeg now a 3-point lead on Washington in the race for the President's Trophy, while Vancouver remains 6 points back of St. Louis for the final wildcard spot in the East, or the West, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver is still alive. A lot of teams are, but they're not really. Nobody's catching and passing St. Louis for that final wildcard spot.
Maple Leafs got by the Ducks in Anaheim 3-2. A Steven Lorentz third period goal was the difference. Mitch Marner scored his 23rd of the season. Toronto moved 3 points up on Tampa Bay and Florida for the top spot in the Atlantic Division. Leafs are on the verge of clinching a playoff spot. They would have clinched had they beat the Ducks, and Montreal lost as well. That didn't happen, but Toronto, by this time next week, most likely will have clinched a playoff spot.
Most likely? I guarantee it, my friend. I will eat my hat if they have not clinched a playoff spot by the time.
No, you won't. You won't. You will not eat your hat. Unless your hat is made of tortillas. You will not be eating.
Well, I will buy a tortilla hat and then I will eat it. One of those, the Homer Simpson that has the nacho cheese in the rim. But no, it's Toronto. That was a beauty goal by Steven Lorentz. It was a very harmless looking wrist shot from the point that was well wide, and he deflected it off the shaft of his stick and in. beautifully done. And back-to-back wins in Southern California for Toronto. Impressive bounce back after their surprising loss in San Jose.
Kings cruise to an 8-1 win over the Sharks. Adrian Kempe, 2 goals, 30 and 31. Warren Fogle had 2 goals, numbers 22 and 23, as LA moved 2 points up on Edmonton for second in the Pacific and home ice in the first round of the playoffs. Penguins get by the Senators 1-0 in overtime. Sidney Crosby's 27th of the season, the only goal on the power play in overtime. Tristan Jarry, 31 saves in the shutout. Anton Forsberg, 34 saves in the tough loss for Ottawa.
I'm glad they brought Jarry back before the end of the season to let him get his confidence back going into the offseason. Now he's a viable option for them next season as opposed to, or potentially a trade. But if they had left him in the AHL for the rest of the season, which they easily could have done, it would have, I think, harmed him mentally going into next season. Now he's a viable option, and he's played very well. Big shutout win over a playoff team.
And our final game of the week, the Utah Hockey Club beat the Blackhawks 5-2. Logan Cooley gets his 22nd. Kyler Yamamoto scored his first with the Utah Hockey Club. In the loss for Chicago, Ryan Donato gets his 29th of the season. And that now brings us to the standings. We will begin. Let's see, where shall we begin?
Let's go alphabetical. The Atlantic, the Eastern Conference.
In the Atlantic Division, we told you the Toronto Maple Leafs are on top, a record of 45, 25 and 4 for 94 points. That is 3 points more than both the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida Panthers, who each have 91 points. They both also played 73 games, so they have an extra game left as we record this than the Maple Leafs do. You've got Ottawa in fourth with 84 points, Montreal in fifth with 77, Detroit in sixth with 74.
What has to scare the Atlantic Division is the goal differential difference. So Florida has a plus 35 goal differential. They've scored 233 goals. They've given up 198 on the season. Tampa has a plus 23. They've scored 242 and they've given up 219. Tampa has a plus 69 goal differential. They've scored far more goals than either of those teams and given up fewer goals than either of those two teams. So they're better offensively, better defensively, and they're playing well. Very dangerous team right now. They may not win the division, but they are my favorite going into the playoffs to come out of the first 2 rounds for the Atlantic Division.
All right, let's check out the Metropolitan Division, where Washington is the lone team at this point in the East to clinch a playoff spot. 47, 17, and 9, the record for 103 points. Carolina is in second place with 94 points. New Jersey in third place with 85 points. We are quite confident that will be the order of finish of the top 3 in the Metropolitan Division. You've got the Rangers in fourth with 77 points, the Blue Jackets in fifth with 75, the Islanders in sixth with 74 points.
If those are not the top 3 in that order, Eddie will eat my hat right here on live on the air.
Interesting.
And it will not be the tortilla chip hat because I will have already consumed that.
They make other kinds of food hats, I'm sure.
Well, we're going to find out. We'll be Googling that frantically if that comes to pass. But I mentioned the goal differential for Tampa Bay, Washington with a plus 70, and they are the only team in the NHL that has not lost 10 games in regulation, either at home or on the road. They are equally dangerous. This is not a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, who are excellent at home, but average at best on the road. Washington is good anywhere they play, and they have been extremely good offensively and defensively all season long and have to be considered the favorite going into the playoffs.
Let's check that wacky Eastern wildcard race. Right now, it is Ottawa and Montreal, your 2 wildcard teams. Ottawa pretty firmly entrenched with that number 1 wildcard spot, 84 points. Montreal has 77 points. So do the New York Rangers, but the Canadiens have played 1 fewer game. Blue Jackets are 2 points back with 75. The Red Wings are 3 points back, as are the Islanders, each with 74 points.
And the Blue Jackets do have 2 games in hand on the Rangers and a game in hand on the Canadiens. So they may be 2 points back, but that game in hand could be all the difference. And they have, as I talked to Rachel a little bit in the second period, I think it may have been off the air. Anybody that doesn't have a fighting interest is rooting for the Blue Jackets because of what they've gone through in the past 12 months. It would be an amazing story, and I'd love to see them make a run here and make the playoffs to have something to cheer about and have a little extra hockey here at the end of the year. Have a little goal to dream about making a run at the Stanley Cup.
Let's move over to the Western Conference. We'll start in the Central Division, where we've got two teams that have punched their playoff tickets, the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars. Winnipeg leading the division 51-19-4 for 106 points. Dallas has also reached the 100-point mark on the season. Colorado 7 points back with 93 points in third place. Then you've got Minnesota and St. Louis, both with 87 points.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a battle. I mean, that's just such a deep battle. Now, St. Louis is 6 points back, and Colorado does have a game in hand. But when you win 9 out of 10 games and you have 7 games left, let's put 6 wins in their last 7 games on the board. That's 12 points. That gets them to 99 points. Now, Colorado would only need 7 points to beat that. But until I see it, I'm not going to believe it can't be done. St. Louis has proven me wrong too many times this year. So I think St. Louis will end up as the number 1 wildcard team, and that will help them as they could potentially, probably go to Vegas instead of Winnipeg for that first round matchup.
And in the Pacific Division, you've got Vegas leading the way on the cusp of getting to 100 points in the season, 45-20-8 for 98 points. They've got a 7-point lead on the Kings, who are in second place with 91 points. And then the Oilers are in third, 2 points back of LA with 89 points. They've all played 73 games. Vancouver's in fourth with 81 points. Calgary in fifth with 80 points.
Yeah, it's only 3 teams are making it out of the Pacific, and the 3 are in that position. Vegas is going to win the division. It's a matter of LA or Edmonton with home ice advantage. And you mentioned it, 2 head-to-head matchups between the 2 in the remaining 9 games, correct?
That is correct.
It is, I don't have to tell you, crucial for the Kings to win those games for 2 reasons. 1, to secure home ice advantage in that first round, and 2, to give them some confidence that they can beat this team when it matters. And that's what they have not been able to do the last 3 years in the first round of the playoffs. I think these 2 are going to be absolutely massive, and one of them is this coming week.
Let's check the wild card race in the West. You've got Minnesota and St. Louis, both with 87 points. Vancouver is 6 points back. Calgary is 7 points back. But I think we both are in agreement that this one has been decided at this point.
Yes, we've seen enough. We're calling it in favor of St. Louis and Minnesota. They are going to make the playoffs as wild cards, almost assuredly. And Vancouver, Calgary, good effort, but not enough. You're going to come up short, as is Utah and Anaheim, who have not been eliminated yet, but it's only a matter of math and time before they both get eliminated.
So if the playoffs started today, and check my math on this, in the East, you would have the Capitals against the Canadiens, Devils versus Hurricanes, which we are right. We're assured that this is going to be a matchup. This is already This is set, and Carolina will have home ice in that first round playoff matchup.
Correct. And Carolina, I have to say, of all the teams, I think Carolina has the easiest first round matchup because of New Jersey missing Jack Hughes.
As it stands right now, you would have Maple Leafs versus Senators in the opening round, which I think would be a fun, spicy matchup.
Yep.
Not as fun and spicy as this next matchup, but still a pretty good one. Panthers versus Lightning would be our other matchup. And we talked a lot about Stars Avalanche, and that will be a great one, but Panthers Lightning, if it holds, would be amazing as well.
The fact that one of those 2 teams is going to be eliminated in the first round will be criminal. And yet that is the way the playoffs are formatted. And if you want to avoid that brutal first round matchup, win your division and you get to play a wild card team.
But Devils, Hurricanes, that's going to happen. The other 3 are still very much up in the air. We shall see.
Absolutely correct.
Although
I would say, I mean, the wild card, Washington is obviously going to play that second wild card. We have no idea who it could be.
Yeah.
If I had to guess a rooting interest, they're hoping it's Montreal, because I don't think they are potentially too worried about losing to Montreal. A series against the Rangers, a series against a Blue Jackets team using emotion, those could be dangerous matchups. I wouldn't want anything to do with either of those. But Montreal, I'll take that anytime if I'm Washington.
Over in the West, you would have the Jets against the Blues in the first round right now. That certainly would be a little bit tougher, I think, than
Very difficult
Winnipeg.
matchup for Winnipeg. Yes.
Stars Avalanche, I'm convinced is going to happen. You still think St. Louis has a chance?
I mean, I'm just saying a chance. It's not a
know,
good chance, but it's a chance.
I think it's going to be Stars Avalanche, and Dallas is going to have home ice in that first round matchup.
Yeah, I mean, almost assuredly that's the case, and that would be a very, very good matchup.
Golden Knights versus Wild would be a first round matchup as it stands now, but again, between Minnesota and St. Louis, it's obviously they're tied in points, so those are still to be determined. And Kings Oilers is going to happen, I believe. You mentioned Golden Knights are going to win the Pacific. I agree. The question is not, is it going to be Kings Oilers? The question is, where will the series start?
Yes, and if I know you and I know your Kings, if somehow they don't win this second spot, it's going to be very deflating. This whole season will feel like it was almost a waste of time because we're right back where we have been. Leon Draisaitl is already back. Connor McDavid is expected back by the playoffs. If those two guys are in the lineup, the Kings have struggled on the road. They lose home ice advantage. Like I said, it is crucial that they win the two head-to-head matchups because that will essentially those two games alone would clinch home ice advantage for them in that first round.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to win both those games. I think they'll split. So it's going to come down to some of the other games that they're going to be playing. So we'll see. I would be pretty surprised if they swept both those games. They lose both those games, then they're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
But I think they'll get the split. But I do agree with you. I think the Kings really need home ice advantage in that first round for their confidence going into that series for sure.
Yeah.
For a fourth straight year.
Yep.
All right. Any final thoughts before we close out this first period as we are getting towards the end of the finish line here?
No, we've got, you mentioned some of the teams that have clinched. I think we have only 3 teams that have clinched a spot so far: Winnipeg, Dallas, and Washington.
Yep.
Nobody has been eliminated from the Eastern Conference yet. Buffalo is still somehow mathematically alive in the playoff race. And again, that speaks to what I've been saying for weeks, that there are no truly bad teams in the Eastern Conference. There are a lot of bad teams in the Western Conference, which is why 4 of them have already been eliminated from the playoffs: San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, and Seattle.
All right, that'll do it for our first period of our YouTube show. If you enjoyed it, we would invite you to check out the remaining 2 periods of our show and our podcast. Search Puck Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you are listening to the podcast already, the second and third periods are coming up. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand, and we'll talk to you next Monday with another edition of the Puck Podcast.